thinking about the 4 functions of behavior, whether it's attention and sensory, escape, tangible, and even understanding those constructs allows a trainer to ask better questions. And one of, I think, the misnomers is that we have to have all the answers. We actually just have to ask really good questions or better questions or next level questions, because as people are processing and communicating about their day, and to Scott's point, they need some designated time for that, not while we're counting reps and they're trying to breathe through the reps, but that they're actually thinking about it and saying, yeah, I tend to have this problem more after this kind of day or in the morning or at these types of points. People are bright. They just need to help them think about their context. You know, they're in the woods, they're in the middle of the trees. They need to step back a little bit, look at the big picture, and then strategize with you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? And welcome to Masters in Fitness Business, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I'm bringing you 2 giants from the state of Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, near our state capital and home of the Mizzou football Tigers. Scott Schulte and his friend owned Evolved Personal Training down there. They used to be Columbia Fitness, right? Strength and Fitness, Columbia Strength and Fitness. You and Nathan own that. And yep. Now they've rebranded right in the middle of COVID to Evolve Personal Training, but it captures their mission a little bit better as far as evolving into the fitness market. He talked about, we were talking before we were recording, that, you know, used to be just personal training, but that's not enough. You have to go beyond that. If you're really going to touch and change people's lives, you have to go into nutrition, and then you have to go into behavior modification, which is why we have Janine Stitcher on the show as well. She's what is your title, Janine?
I'm a behaviorist, so I have my doctorate in behavior analysis.
Okay. So Dr. Janine Stitcher, she's a behaviorist, and she's been working with Columbia Strength and Fitness and now Evolve Personal Training for quite a while to incorporate a lot of the behavior modifications into the programming at Evolved. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for putting this on. I've been watching a lot of your podcast during this COVID time. So I really appreciate you putting in the time and the man hours to educate all of us out there working hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate that. But, you know, I really appreciate you, Scott, in that you really think differently, which is the reason that I like having you on the show. And the fact that you used Dr. Stitcher in your business tells me that, you know, you're willing to grow and evolve and reach that new level of customer service that's going to be a differentiator, which will come up later in the show because I know you built out that new course for that. But Scott, first I want to jump into the rebranding. Why rebranding? And were you always planning a rebrand and the timing just worked out to hit right in the middle of COVID? Or walk us through that.
So I wasn't really planning the rebrand, but after enough Thomas Plummer courses and hearing about just the importance of the name and also looking at our location, we were at the same location for 10 years and it worked beautifully for us. But most of our clientele was in a slightly different location in town. And so it worked out. I found a gym that was actually shutting down. It was in a better spot. It had a nice build out. And we were called Columbia Strength and Conditioning before. And a lot of people, when they hear strength and conditioning, they think we're working with athletes. And we mainly work with general population people. And so I didn't want to scare people away of thinking that it was too intense or that we just work with athletes. I wanted our spot to be open for everybody. Like, I love when people come in and train at our facility and it is their first training experience. And so I wanted to make that accessible to everyone. Now, we started doing the plan for the move and the rebrand before all the COVID stuff hit. But we were already kind of deep in the transition. And so we just kind of rolled with it. I mean, the beauty was during that time was a great time to sell any excess equipment that I had. It gave us some time to kind of really dig deep into all the changes you need, because it's amazing how many things your name is on. from anywhere from your mind body software to all the emails that are going out to just anything and everything. Because like the staff needs all new shirts, the clientele needs new swag, all these different things. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but the location that we have, I'm super happy with. The name change, the image, everything that we have is, I think, more up to date to what we're doing and serving our clients.
Is it about the same size?
So we went from 5,000 to 7,500 square feet.
Okay, so you're bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And I know the thing that I liked about you, and the reason I had you on the podcast before, is that you guys, in addition to the training, you're dead on when it comes to the training. I know you guys do kind of a movement-based philosophy to your training, but then you also incorporate the lifestyle, the nutrition. I know, do you still have the cafe in your facility?
We condensed the cafe down a little bit. We have it all at our front desk. So we still have kombucha on tap. We still have espresso maker. We can do coffee. We have some post-workout drinks, but we're not technically making anything. That created a lot of noise. That created a lot of work. So I do like having stuff there for people, either to have before or after, because again, it's and we've talked a lot about this, is community is big. And if we can have a place where people kind of hang out a little bit before or after, have a drink, talk with friends, that's very important. It's something that we strive for.
Okay. So the cafe wasn't as big of a revenue generator as you thought, or wasn't serving the purpose you thought? Is that why you kind of downsized it, to reduce your headache but still have the benefits of it?
Well, a couple things. Before, at our old locations, we kind of had two different spots. And so part of it's just staffing it. And so we had a lot of college students that came in and made shakes, and really that type of staffing for just the cafe wasn't, we had a lot of turnover with that. So we had that a little bit of an issue. Also, just the traffic wasn't, because we're more of a one-on-one personal training facility. So our traffic isn't huge on a daily basis. Talking to people that have had success with shakes and cafe bars and stuff like that, it's more of your box gym where you have thousands of people that potentially come in and out. Mm-hmm. And really, I just wanted my staff that's currently working focusing on the people. And if they're back there making shakes and they're cleaning up and all the stuff, there's less time that they had that they could actually interact with the clientele coming in and out. And so if I could just get something that was already made, so they didn't have to deal with making it from scratch or cleaning up afterwards, it was less employees that I had to have. It was less room that I had to have for a cafe, less I had to deal with on just the codes for health department, stuff like that. And it created a better environment for my staff just interacting with clientele.
Gotcha. All right. Smart move, as usual. And now I know that you guys do the lifestyle coaching with people. And Janine, can you tell the listeners kind of how you got involved with Scott and Nate and Evolve Personal Training?
Sure. Numerous years ago, maybe 7+ years ago, I started actually just training at the gym with Scott. And I went in, I had some very specific things I was working on. And over time, as Scott and I would talk, through training and things like that, he learned a little bit more about what I do and the philosophies I have about things. We would talk about challenges that he was seeing with clients and that I had seen just, working with, whether it's fitness professionals, or supplement companies, other businesses that I worked at, and just human behavior. And so as we started talking about that and talking about strategies and things like that, I think I probably naturally threw in a suggestion here or two, and then there was just some synergy in the way that we were thinking and talking, and so that slowly evolved, and then we kind of shifted to adding some more targeted business and trainer focus to our conversations and my work with them.
Okay, awesome. Well, I know you guys have been working together for a long time. So can you, and I'll throw this out to both of you, can you kind of tell me what was the first iteration of integrating the behavioral modification or any behavioral modification into the business, and kind of where is it today from that first implementation to where you are today?
Yeah, I'll start this off. We started off more in the realm of her helping us with employees. She does DISC profiling for employees. And so really on that kind of assessment, I believe we went into that a lot on our first podcast that we talked about. She
Yep.
went into these DISC profiles and making sure that the trainers were a good fit for the position, making sure that our office manager was a good fit for that position. And then also working with Nate and I as owners on communication. So it was really more behavior change on us as owners and also working with the trainers. Because the trainers, especially with new coming in and doing some of the stuff we do with the lifestyle accountability coaching, is like, okay, how do I have these harder conversations with clients? Because it's one thing talking someone through, okay, here's how to do a squat. It's another thing talking about like, okay, we're having stress management issues or having relationship issues or different things like that. So it really started as just working at us as a business. And then as we kind of evolved, it was more of integrating, okay, how do we become better coaches working with our clients? How do we do more behavior change? Because the majority of the people that we see are coming to us because they want to lose weight. So we're like, okay, that's pretty simple. We need to improve nutrition. We probably need to move a little bit more. But there's so much more layers to that. Like I can tell people they need to eat better, and people are like, yes, I understand that. But it's more about like, okay, what are replacements that we can do? How do we get long-lasting change with this? How do we work on more stress management? Because when people are super stressed out, they're not going to eat right. So really peeling back a few layers, working on more of the root causes of why people are doing what they do.
Okay. And Janine, do you have any insight into that?
Well, Scott articulated it really well and thoroughly. I think a theme that I would add to that is about matching strategies to the person, and also matching strategies, the way that we communicate strategies, to the way that we are as an individual. And so what I mean by that is, if you have a client that's struggling with late night eating or a little bit too much alcohol, let's say, on a regular basis, for some people, it's just about reducing moderation, portion size, of whatnot, based on whatever is creating that behavior. But for other people, it's loneliness, it's a way to connect with others. So we have to find a replacement behavior for that. Because if I'm not serving the function anymore, I'm not going to stick with it. So we spent a lot of time talking about things like that, not only for their clients, but also as a business owner. How do you incentivize, engage your employees, and really get them to see their full potential within the space that they're working? And one size does not fit all there either. So, a raise doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. Other people need time off. Other people want perks, different things like that. So really looking at what is the function of people's behavior in general, and then matching strategies as a business owner to really engage your staff and have the quality team and the culture that you want. And the way that we take fitness strategies and health and wellness strategies and impart them on individuals in a more individualized way, or at least in a better matching manner to what they really need.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I agree with both you guys on all parts, is that in order to really make lasting change in anybody's life, it's going to involve some behavior modifications on their part. And so I really like that. But my question is, how do you implement that in a systematic way? To where, because like you said, one size doesn't fit all. Everybody's going to have kind of a different emotional triggers or different needs that those habits are serving. So how do you implement that where it's systemic, where you can repeat it with client after client, trainer after trainer, but still individualize it?
I think what's important here is you have to have dedicated time with your clients to go over this. And what we found is that doesn't work great on the training floor. Now, the training floor is a great time to reinforce what you've talked about, to check up. But like some people are just trying to survive their training session, and you trying to get deep into like what's holding them back outside the gym is not the best time. So we have everyone that's a member here, at least once a month, we will meet with them and go over this. Along with that, we also created an assessment. And so we have 10 different areas that we'll have an assessment on. So it's kind of rating where they're at and where they want to be at in 12 weeks. And so we have the physical side. We have strength, flexibility, and stamina. And even on that side alone, it's amazing how many people that we haven't fill out, and they've never mentioned flexibility to us at all. They just talk about, you know, they want to lose the weight, they want to get stronger, but they fill out this assessment and they're like, flexibility came up as a top priority. And so we use different systems as well. Like we use Trainerize, we use Nomly. We use these different systems to, we'll just put simple stretching programs for people to do at home when they're outside of here. We'll do recommendations for different places to go, whether it's yoga or whatever that is. We also do that same assessment with mindset, relationship, happiness, nutrition, stress management, health, and something we call giving fit back, of just kind of being a fitness influencer to your peers. And then every month we have them retake that assessment. And what's important about this assessment is we always line this up with whatever their goal is. So they might take the assessment in flexibility and stress management show up, but they came in, they said they want to lose weight. Well, I don't tell them that like, well, losing weight shouldn't be your goal. I'm just like, hey, if we do the flexibility stuff, we decrease our chance for injury, we increase our range of motion so we can have better workouts. If we control stress management, we're less likely to stress eat, which usually leads to overeating, which usually leads to eating too many calories, which usually leads to weight gain. If we can work on these underlying issues, for you, we'll help you reach your goal. So each month we're meeting with them one-on-one, going over what their goals are, going over their assessment, and then figuring out where they're at, making small steps week by week on how they can improve that. That's the other thing that the fitness industry is notorious for, is we love extremes. You know, we're either going to go vegan or we're going to go carnivore diet. You know, it's just like, we're going to cut out all meat, or we're just going to eat meat, or we're going to go all fat or all carbs. You know, there's just everything is extreme. And so many of these people are so far away from just eating a healthy diet, not eating a lot of junk food, moving on a daily basis. How do we make these small, easy steps? And Janine talked about this earlier. We're big on replacements. That's why I like having kombucha on tap here. You know, if someone comes in, they're drinking soda, I need to get that soda out. They know they need to get that soda out. Me just telling them to stop drinking soda is not that helpful. If I can find something that matches the function that they're trying to overcome here, if I can give them that kombucha and they like it just as much, then we get a lower calorie, healthier drink that they don't feel like they're depriving themselves from. So much in the fitness space is based on your willpower. And I want to get away from that somewhat. I want to find these replacements. I want to make small incremental steps. I want to give people wins. And people need that regular check-in and that accountability.
Yeah, I like that, because I've always said that willpower will let you down. You know, if you have the cookies in the house, you know, they're going to get eaten, whether it's 2 PM or 2 AM, but they're going to get eaten if they're in the house, because your willpower, you'll have a stressful day or not get any rest or whatever, and then you'll pound those cookies down. So, Janine, what part did you have any part in coming up with this assessment that they use?
Yeah, it was definitely an assessment that Scott, Nate, and I built. You know, I tend to come in with sort of the nuances and the details and some of the constructs to think about, and then we look at how does that apply to what trainers are dealing with on a regular basis with clients and those types of things. And I really appreciated your question too about this notion of how do you go to scale with this, right? If it's individualized, how do you sort of go to scale? And one of the big areas that we worked on in our certification program, in the way that we work with our trainers to deliver this, is I think I would categorize in 2 ways. One is we categorize things at least in a couple of buckets. So you can think about people that are abstainers able to have, Scott will use the analogy of a chocolate bar and eat one square and put the rest away, and then the next day have a square. Some people can do that. Other people are just are can't abstain, and so they're dealing with this sort of excess, right? Like you said, if the cookies are in there, you're gonna pound them back at some point. So understanding there's these different types of clients and how they function, and so one of them, they can do something in moderation. You can talk about having a little treat each day. Other people can't, and so that's not a great strategy. So even conceptually thinking about that, thinking about the 4 functions of behavior, whether it's attention and sensory, escape, tangible, and even understanding those constructs allows a trainer to ask better questions. And one of, I think, the misnomers is that we have to have all the answers. We actually just have to ask really good questions or better questions or next level questions, because as people are processing and communicating about their day, and to Scott's point, they need some designated time for that, not while we're counting reps and they're trying to breathe through the reps, but that they're actually thinking about it and saying, yeah, I tend to have this problem more after this kind of day or in the morning or at these types of points. People are bright. They just need to help them think about their context. They're in the woods, they're in the middle of the trees. They need to step back a little bit, look at the big picture, and then strategize with you. So a big part of what we work on is to give people buckets of questions and thoughts, and even the 10 categories that Scott talked about that we put in our assessment. It just gives you those walking tools to start having those conversations. And for a lot of people, trainers are the only people that are checking in on them with these things. How is your relationships? How are the tribe? Who are you spending time with? What social media are you listening to? What news are you listening to? What are you putting in your environment, and how is it impacting you?
Interesting. Interesting. I like that. The next level question. So they can kind of be involved in the process and buy into it and be aware of it. So create some awareness with them as well. I like that quite a bit. So what is the most common scenario? Because you guys have been doing this for a while. So just for our listeners, just for an example's sake, what's the most common scenario that you guys tend to encounter when you're doing these assessments and these accountability meetings?
So I would say a lot of them start off just in your normal case, like you see initial people. People are coming in, they're like, I want to lose X amount of pounds. I want to be leaner. They're always starting the same way. What we see after we take the assessment is, okay, stress management is the main concern. And so they're super stressed, especially now. Like, we're dealing with parents with their kids, it's all going from home. Like, they're not going to school now. They're super stressed. I was talking to a lady yesterday. She's worried about the world with the political unrest, and there's just a ton of stress right now. And so she wants to lose weight. Me adding more stress to her life by tracking food, by cutting out certain things at this point, isn't going to be super helpful. It's going to create more stress, and then she's going to fail at it because it's just creating more stress. And then that's going to just add to more stress. So instead, we're working on different things of like, all right, can we just work on getting our walks in? Can we work on cutting back some social media and giving people more concrete examples of that? Of like, okay, each evening, you're going to read this book that you like first, get on social media. And so it's really kind of breaking down those specific things that they took the assessment, so it came up as their top priority. But really diving into that, because a lot of people are still going to be like, well, don't I need to do more cardio or just work on my nutrition because I want to fit my clothes? I'm like, we will get there, but we need to work on these foundational pieces first, because I don't care about you losing 10 pounds in the next 6 weeks if we can't sustain it for past that. We want to build a strong foundation so we can have long-lasting results.
I like that. So you guys have been doing this for quite a while. So what was the biggest difference you guys saw since you've implemented these interventions versus before?
So it's really been an evolution of how we've done this. Like when we first started doing these, it was just the nutrition aspect of it, and we were just doing like caliper measurements. It was amazing how we would make people more obsessed about the numbers because we were measuring them all the time. And then what we found out were that trainers like Nate and I, who've been doing this for 15 years, we would get pretty good at it because we learned how to ask better questions. But you almost have to be a detective with your clients on figuring out what's actually holding them back. But since we created the assessments, we're getting some of the answers without us even asking. So we can see, because it's a self-assessment, they're telling us where they want to improve on. And so we can get some better answers, so we can ask better questions. And so then we have less focus on just the weight loss or just the body composition, because what we talk about is we want to help people become leaner, healthier, and happier. And what you'll see a lot of people in the fitness industry, they'll make people leaner, but it'll be at the cost of stress will go up, their happiness will go down, their tribe will get worse. So we want to make all these areas better, not just getting people to weigh less.
Yeah.
And I think too, people, I think a part of this evolution too is using different language. So if you've noticed, we've talked about stress management. Stress management implies that we're managing stress. It does not mean that there is no stress. That's unrealistic. Work-life balance is a misnomer term because it assumes that there is truly a balance between work and whatever else is going on in your life. And that's rarely the case. Usually one usurps the other at any given time. Understanding that, knowing that, rolling with that cycle, but how you manage those variations, the ups and downs, those types of things. So it's really the same thing with food. You know, is it junk food? Is it crap food? Is it all bad food, or I'm bad for eating it? No, there's different foods that we also access at different times based on different situations that were going on. So it's not, I'm going to cut out all my stuff. It's, let's figure out what our big rocks are that Scott would say, or our primary violator. Like, what are the big ones? And then how can we look at that? Why are those occurring? Why am I accessing those? Why are those cookies? Or is there a difference if I eat them at 2 in the afternoon versus 2 a.m.? Are there two different things going on there? Let's pick one, address that. And as Scott said earlier, you know, we're so used to these extremes. And I think a big part of what that evolution is, even in the way that Evolved and some of the other fitness facilities that we've worked with are incorporating this, is really changing that language and even that mindset about how we communicate, and taking small incremental steps towards that big goal. And there's a lot of neuroscience and neuroimaging studies that actually show that when we do something quickly, extreme for 2 weeks, right? Like the all-in this diet or this exercise, we actually don't see any brain activity change. When we see it is when we take smaller steps over time, and those behaviors maintain. And they, you know, we literally can see that in the brain, what's activating and what's maintaining. So if we know all of this stuff, why are we perpetuating that? So it's changing that language, changing expectations to be like, hey, we have your back, we're working with you. This is a process. And let's get excited about that process, make small incremental goals that we can celebrate. And it's not all necessarily about the numbers and the scale, calipers, whatever, combination. And celebrate those and then move on to that next level. Because we also know psychologically, when we try something and then fail, try something and then fail, over time we create, you know, an extreme negative feedback loop. And so every time we try again, we're actually starting further behind the proverbial 8 ball. And so it feels like it's more work because it is more work for us. And so not to mention any of the physiological impact that we may have had on our body through that process as well.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. You know, it's kind of ironic when I was down in Colombia last week, drove down there just for the day, and I was listening to this podcast called The Science of Success. And they had this neuroscientist on there talking about neuroplasticity. And what he said is that neurons that what did you say? Neurons that fire together bind together, you know, and then that's how you start to change behaviors is, but it has to be intentional, right? And so you have to have like a focus with it or some kind of goal in mind when you're starting to, and be cognizant of it when you're starting to implement those behavioral changes. So that's right in line with what you were saying. And then the other thing that I noticed in the research that you sent me, Janine, is that one of the things of the cognitive behavioral interventions was meditation and how that can help you out. So do you guys incorporate that into the accountability sessions, or do you talk about that? How does that work? That's just something I'm personally interested in.
So yeah, it's something that we are actually experimenting more with too. Like Janine and I actually are having a coach take us through some transcendental meditation and kind of learning that. I like to explore a lot of different ways. Like I've done Headspace consistently for a year. I've liked that. I've done a lot of different forms. My big thing with clients is providing options and seeing what they're open to. So if I bring up meditation, they're like, oh, you know, it's not a good thing for me, I'll move on to something else and then slowly try to bring it back up later. I think it is a beautiful tool. I do recommend it for most of my clients, but I got to find people at the right time for that. So some of the people, it's more of like, find your favorite music and listen to that. So many people, I think, give too much pressure on meditation in the sense of they think as soon as they start doing it, mind's going to be clear. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm not doing it right. There's a lot of different ways. There's walking meditations, there's different music, there's focus on different things, there's breath, there's body scans, there's transcendental meditation. There's so many different ways. It's almost like saying working out. So figuring out the right one that fits for that person and giving them different ways to explore it.
Gotcha. And then how does meditation fit into the whole behavior modification landscape, Janine?
Well, in numerous ways that are pretty extensive to kind of boil down, but I think one of the key things that I would say is that particularly, you know, cognitive behavior interventions are really about understanding your behavior, being aware of it, and the thoughts. And, you know, you even talked about the neurons that fire together. What pairings have I made with certain things? What associations have I made? What stories have I told myself? And then kind of unraveling those stories into what I can do in the future and not be stuck on what I haven't done in the past, and making some cognitive awareness of that. So oftentimes, you know, when we think of people that are in, let's say, a sympathetic state, or they're really highly stressed, they're physiologically, they're cognitively really just wired in this fast-paced reactive mode, it becomes very difficult to do good cognitive behavior interventions, rethinking, restructuring the way that we're thinking, if we're in this sort of you know, fight flight kind of mode. And so I think meditation is one tool to help really get people back into more of that, be it parasympathetic or just in a different frame of mind, to start thinking and processing through some of those tools. Because I talk to, you know, analogy I use a lot with people in behavior is, if I'm having a conversation, you and I, and I'm talking about, it's like, hey, you know, it seems like you get stressed out when this happens, or you're working on your anger management. Let's think about when that crops up, what goes through your head, what could you do to relax it, right? You and I might have a really nice functional conversation. If I'm out at a bar and two guys are in the middle of like just a physical brawl and everything is, it's not the time for me to walk up and, hey guys, seems like we're having an issue with anger management. Let's think about what's right. I'm just gonna, I'm probably physically going to not leave that environment looking so great, because they're not there. They actually literally can't process and orient to what I'm talking about. Their bodies are not able to do that cognitively and neurologically. So meditation really helps us get to a point where we're able to absorb that. You know, it's just like nutrition, and our bodies need to be able to absorb, you know, the nutrients that we put in it, things like that. So it's just a tool to help us prep the space to actively engage in some of the strategies. And so that's to Scott's point too, and with talking about meditation. If somebody right away has this visceral response to it, we need to figure out, are they tried it, or was it a different kind, or just let them settle back down. Let's find something that they're comfortable with, and then layer it back on when they're feeling more success or are ready for that information.
Yeah, I like that. So basically through the behavioral modification interventions that you guys have implemented, the assessment being one tool, is that you're gradually trying to get people in the space that they need to be in to hear the answers that they're looking for, whatever that may be. And timing is key on that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and so much of it is this mindset. And you'll and Janine talked about this earlier, you'll hear these stories that these people tell themselves, and they're kind of just stuck in that. And so it comes from a lot of different things. They need some positive reinforcement to kind of help them get out of that. We can definitely do that. But one of my favorite things that I do with almost all my clients is I am constantly sending them Audible books to listen to, especially if they don't have the Audible account. Like the first one you can send is for free, which is, it's almost like a very nice gift that you're giving to someone. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you know, it's the book Mindset, or it's any of Brene Brown's work. There's just like a lot of different books that I'll have and I'll send to people so that they can spend some time outside of here reinforcing different thought patterns. Even sending TED Talks, even sending like hardback books, you know, like the 5-Minute Journal is another favorite of mine. Like there's a lot of different things in there, and we need to try to overcome a lot of these negative thoughts, or these thoughts that are creating them to become stuck. And that's going to become with a lot of repetition. And so the more ways that we can get that in, and different approaches that we can have, and hearing from different people, the better chance that we have to really help them change.
And I think too that is one of the big things that when I'm working with trainers, I'm emphasizing is oftentimes as an adult, when we're communicating with an adult, and anybody that's been in a long-term interpersonal relationship can relate to this. I told you once, like, why would I say this again? Or it seems demeaning to have to say it again, or weren't you listening the first time, or things like that. But the entire science of learning tells us that repetition and incremental steps are the key to learning. Otherwise, the first time we got in a car and somebody showed us how to drive it, we should have nailed it. And we all know that doesn't happen. So over time, that has to occur. So a lot of times I work with talking to trainers about, you will have to say it again and again, find different ways, ask questions, try to draw it out. And it's not demeaning as long as you're doing it with a genuine intention of, hey, have you thought about this? Remember we talked about this before, where are you at with that? And just over time, or sharing it in different ways, like Scott talked about. It might be an Audible one time, another time it might be a conversation, another time it might be a quick social media clip that's kind of nailing that. So that notion of that repetition and that connectivity that people need. And the other thing is, just because they show up at your gym doesn't mean they're ready for everything you have to share. So it's also thinking about, they showed up. Let's just make that feel good. Talk about where they are. And then over time, you're adding on, as opposed to they showed up, they came in, we got our 15 minutes of lifestyle coaching. I'm going to give them every tool in my toolbox. And what you want them to do is walk around with a nice tool belt with a few key tools for a while that are working for them, and not ask them to walk out with a 50-pound toolbox that is just impossible to carry and is setting them up for failure.
Yeah, I like that. That makes total sense. So meet them where they are and then gently guide them to where they need to be or want to be. I like that. And this gives you a kind of more concrete way of doing it. So let's talk about, so you guys have developed this into a program that you're sharing with other people called the differentiator. You guys want to tell the listeners about that?
Yeah, so we actually started with a book. It's called Ready Fit, and it's designed for the end user, so more for our clientele to read. It's more of thinking of fitness differently, so redefining fitness, and so it gets into those 10 categories that I talked about differently. So it's a great resource for our clients, for just the end user in general. And then what we saw is almost everyone needs a coach. And you've seen this, whether it's business or it's jits or it's personal training, just everybody needs a coach. And so we can talk and this can help our clients think about fitness differently, but they need someone in their corner to look at all the different aspects and help them. So part of it is accountability. Part of it is kind of filtering through all the noise, because the internet is amazing, but it's just a ton of noise. Our space is very conflicting with information. Everybody's got a friend or a brother or sister that did something that was a little bit out there that had success, and we have to go through that. And so what we did was we created an online system to educate trainers on how to do the lifestyle accountability, how to use the assessment, how to talk to clients, and really to have a better understanding of the behavior side from a lot of the stuff that Janine was talking about.
You have anything to add on that, Janine?
I think that we really worked on making, and it's a certification because some people need those for their work or like to know that they have that complete system. And we also worked on creating strategies and tools for wellness and fitness professionals to have. So, okay, I have my 10 areas. I've gone through this. I understand now how to ask better questions. And then as I'm in there with someone and I have their assessment, what are some strategies in the area of relationships or stress management or things like that? So we've provided a list of some of those resources, and we're constantly updating it, because it is helpful to be like, oh, well, this person said this, like, what do I have? And then over time, of course, we can kind of commit more to memory. But for example, relationships is one that a lot of people feel maybe a little bit insecure about having that conversation with their client, or they're worried that they're being asked to give marriage advice. And so we make it real clear that that's not what we're doing at all or encouraging. But it is talking about who do you spend time with and who your tribe is and things like that. So we really try to break down some ways to think about it, ask questions, ask those better questions that I referenced before. And then here's some resources or strategies that we know are evidence-based, that are tried and true, that we can give our clients, and a way to sort of track that. So we're not overwhelming them, but giving them a couple of things that they can do and then checking up on them regularly.
Yeah, I like what you guys are saying, and it sounds great. So when you get a trainer to start with the differentiator, do you recommend that they start with themselves so they can kind of experience it themselves, kind of maybe make some changes in their lives, but also kind of gives them that the empathy for their clients having to go through some of that and face some of their those challenges themselves, so they can kind of relate and resonate a little bit more when the client is going through the same issues.
100%. We actually have a workbook that goes along with our education, and the foundation one, where we're going over the 10 categories, is they am actually acting like the client, taking the assessment, see where they are in it, see where their shortcomings are. And it's amazing, even like working with our staff and just hearing the conversations they had. Like we were just talking with one of our newer trainers this last week. He's like, flexibility is one of those things. I'm like, okay, what are you doing about this? He's like, well, the goal for me is to do some stretching every day. I'm like, well, how's that going? He's like, well, I haven't started. I'm like, maybe that's a little much. And he's like, I was like, how much do you do in strength training? I was like, well, I'm doing an hour and a half of strength training each day. Well, all we need to do is cut back a little bit of that strength training to have a little bit of room with the flexibility. And so it just, we all do this. Like we, especially on the physical side, we love doing the things that we feel like we're better at. We love doing the things that we feel confident in, like we've had the experience at. But some of these things, like flexibility, for a lot of trainers out there, like they haven't had a lot of training in it, or it hasn't been a bigger part of the program. They might do a few minutes before, a few minutes after, but like really actually dedicating, like having a flexibility session, just like a workout session. It's a 45 minutes, it's dedicated time, just works on that. It's just a mindset shift. And so I think it's hugely important that people go through this themselves, because for a coach to recommend something like meditation, and they've never tried any meditation, that's not going to come off very well. Mm-hmm. So you have to experience some of the stuff. And when we talk about these different categories, I don't expect everybody to be experts in all of them. Like, I refer out a lot. Like, we have professional counselors that I will send people to because they need that help. I'm not trying to be the professional counselor, but I will talk, and we will talk about, like, when it comes to relationship, what are those positive fitness influencers in their lives, and how do we get them to spend more time with those people? So different issues like that. So yeah, I completely agree, and it's something that we push a lot of. They have to live it first.
And I think too, even if they can't, because we can't always experience everything, right, that everyone else is going through. And sometimes gender-wise, it's really hard to do that.
Right.
But it is interesting when, we work with trainers and we start talking even nutrition, which a lot of trainers have been very oriented to for a long time. And they'll say to me something like, well, I don't, with my hours, I can't get my meal prep in. I'm like, okay, how many times have you recommended meal prep to your clients? And they're just like, oh yeah, I do that. Okay, so what's your hack? Or if you're struggling, they might be, or maybe they're struggling because they're like, I just don't like to cook that much, period. Like, so meal prep to me is just painful and whatever. I was like, have you ever asked your clients, do they enjoy cooking? Where's the stumbling block? And they're like, oh yeah, that might not, it's a great strategy, but it might not be great for everyone in this arena, or they might not be ready for it yet. So it's just, even by asking themselves those questions or thinking that through, even if they don't experience everything, again, they're better set to ask those better questions.
Yeah, I really like that, and I really endorse that, because I think what I see a lot is that some of the trainers who are newer to the fitness business side, they have something that works for them, and they really enjoy fitness. It really is a source of confidence for them. And so when they start, they say, well, this works for me, so it should work for everybody. Or like they give those kind of cookie cutter recommendations. Oh yeah, you got to meal prep, even though they don't meal prep in their daily lives. So things like that. So it gives them a certain amount of humility. And also, like you said, it does a good job of providing that lens of, like when I worked at my last place, there was a trainer there, and he was a bodybuilder. I called him a meathead, and I can say that because I consider myself a meathead somewhat. But he would tell us female clients, I want you to eat 12 egg whites and a bowl of oatmeal every day. It's like, yeah, I don't think Mrs. Johnson's going to do that, and I don't think she should do that. So it's like, to your point, it was something that, hey, this works for me, so it can work for you, not thinking to look at it through the lens of Mrs. Johnson. Yeah, I really like that. So tell me a little bit more about the program, the differentiator, how it works, how people can find out more about it, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, thedifferentiatorpro.com, we have a lot of the breakdown of how it works. We broke it down to 3 different models. So there's one that we just talked about is understanding the 10 different areas and treating yourself as the client. Number 2 is, how do you talk to people about this? You're like, okay, now I have this assessment tool, I have this concept, I need to do it, but how do I talk to my current clients about it? How do I talk to my peers about it? How do I talk to my, just people on the street about this? Because you need to be able to communicate.
And employees, if you have employees, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Even get into part of a little bit into the sales part of it, and just like using it as a whole. Like, what does that initial meeting look like? What do follow-up meetings look like? Because we really need to have a good concept of like how this runs. And then that third section is really get into a lot of the concepts that Janine uses and a lot of the psychology, because it's good to have an understanding. And this also gives you the empathy of why people don't follow what you're saying. And Janine, you can touch more on that third part.
Yeah, when I first started working more in the fitness industry with my behavioral lens and things like that, and I was orienting myself to what are trainers and fitness and health and wellness people experiencing, what's their education platforms look like, and you see a lot of these certifications in all of these different areas, and they're fascinating, but oftentimes they land in either the physicality part or something like a kettlebell or area or something, whatever it is, program writing, all these things that are important, and nutrition. But what I saw was fitness professionals and wellness people are having all of these conversations and need to have these conversations about the time outside of the appointment with them or their daily lives, things like that. And we weren't seeing any certifications or training online platforms, or not much towards that end that were really built for them. So we really wanted to look at how can we create a certification that provides that and is foundational. So this isn't, you don't have to be a therapist to take this or whatever. This is really core information. So the new trainer coming on, or someone that's really wanting to expand their services, because this is one of those kind of training or certification areas that if you do it and you're engaged in it and you like it, it's an add-on service for your business or your model. So there's an economic positive to that too. But quite frankly, if you get better results with your clients, right, they stick around longer, and
get more referrals.
Yes, exactly. And that's good for you as well. But again, I might be thinking about the conversations I need to have with folks, but how do I have them? What are those cornerstones of behavioral hiccups that people are challenged with? And one of the things the assessment does is it also prioritizes different areas above others. So I might need to work on, 2 or 3 of them. And maybe giving fit back is something that I care a lot about. And I do want to be like a good role model for my kiddo or family members. So I might mark that as a need area for taking the assessment. But if my stress management or my relationships area is also a need, those are going to come first, because so it allows that prioritization, and then it helps trainers really understand where to focus, and then some of those tools behind that.
Yeah, it gives you a starting point and kind of a roadmap. Yeah, I like that quite a bit. And I like what you said, because outside the gym is a tremendous influence. I mean, on any given day, you see your client for an hour a day, for 1 hour that day. Maybe if you have another meeting, it's 90 minutes, but that leaves 23 more hours in the day that they have to deal with and live through and still try to hit their health and fitness goals. So if you're neglecting that area, then you're neglecting 1/23 of their life, so it has a tremendous impact.
It's also too, one of the things that we've spent a lot of time talking about too is, and it's called like social conformity or normative conformity or cognitive biases. But we also talk about that when people hit a certain age, there's assumptions about how their body should work, or people have conversations with them like, yeah, you're going to get a gut because you're getting older, or you're going to feel crappy because you're, or your eyesight's going to go to, because, there's all of these sort of statements, and then different families are just used to different ways of thinking about mobility and health and wellness. So a big part of it too is learning how to figure out what biases people are walking into. Because if I walk into you and say, hey, I want you to help me lose weight, but in the back of my head, I think I'm older, my metabolism is shot, my thyroid probably doesn't work, I'm never going to look like that, or I'm never going to be able to go for a 2-mile walk, or I'm never going to be able to. If I'm coming in with all of these things, and you that are working with me don't understand that I'm coming in with these presumptions, and you're not asking, well, why? Why do you think that? Or why can't you? Or let's see where we go with this, those type of things. So it's really about helping us look through different lenses And because we walk in as professionals, we walk in with our own biases. Like you said, your meathead trainer had his own bias about what makes a good breakfast and a good, protein hit or whatever that combination is. It's beyond my nutritional understanding. But he's walking in with his own biases of what the best thing should be. And so if we don't stop our own biases short by asking enough questions to understand where the client needs to go and not just what we want to share. So we really tried to unpack that, especially in that third section that Scott referenced to, where we get into more of the psychology about how our brains work, our own as well as our clients.
I love it. So like say if I signed up for the course and I did it myself, then is there a vehicle for me to use it to train my staff to it?
So the course itself would be the right tool for you or for your trainers underneath you. And then we have it set up as the assessment tool as you can use as you for a gym. So you'll have admin rights to it, and you can add trainers and move clientele around with that. But as long as as far as the education, everybody going through the same thing would be the right platform for that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, awesome. This has been very eye-opening, and I think it's really, really important because, I don't think you could have named the website even better, the Differentiator Pro, because everybody's looking for a way to stand out. And if you talk, I know you're a big fan of Thomas Plummer, as am I, and he talks about like you need that thing. Most trainers don't address nutrition. And if you're trying to help somebody lose weight and not addressing nutrition, then you probably aren't going to have a lot of success. And so I think the next evolution of that is behavior modification, because people do have a lot of behaviors that are tied to habits or emotions or, like you said, beliefs or stories they tell themselves. And you really have to kind of dive in and unravel that a ball of yarn so that you can get a clearer picture of how you can help them reach their goals. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Well, this has been great. I would like to have you guys back on the show because you have definitely piqued my curiosity. And just see how you guys, once all of this COVID stuff is over and we can kind of get back to, not the new normal, but normal. I hate the new normal. I think everybody does. So when it gets back to normal, maybe we can have a conversation without the cloud of COVID hanging on overhead. But before we go, I know I've had you on the show before, Scott, and I'm going to throw these questions out to both of you. And it's my favorite part of the show, and it's my podcast, so I'm going to indulge myself. It's 3 questions I ask every guest. And the first one is, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from it that you used to propel you to greater success down the road.
I'll kick this off so Janine can have a second to think. Really, when Nate and I just started the gym, it started off as we didn't have a plan. We just kind of jumped. It was more of that kind of field of dreams approach where we'll build it, they'll come. Now,
you guys,
beauty is,
I know you left Jeff Powell to start, right?
Yeah. We left that. We were originally a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. And then we evolved to Columbia Strength and Conditioning. And then, a decade later, it evolved to personal training. But like I tell people, like if you're willing to work hard, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to adapt, like you can definitely make it in those conditions. Kind of like we are now with COVID and all the changing there. But like I would say, looking at that first year, it was not a success. Just because we didn't have it well planned out, we didn't have the right coaching, and we didn't have the right experience. But again, like it's one of my greatest success now looking back at it, because we were able to learn, we were able to get the right mentors, we were able to adapt and turn it into this great thing that we have today.
So what were some of the lessons that you learned from a business standpoint that helped you turn it around?
So honestly, like, and I'll get to that specific thing, but I would spend more time with successful coaches if I would do it over again. Because I worked at a couple different places, but spending more time, I think more people need to go back to that mentorship, that apprenticeship model, where they can see the ins and outs of everything that you're doing on a daily basis. But really, it's just there's a lot of details, and that's why Janine's such a great partner in our newest one, because she's the detail person. I'm more of like, like, I'll figure it out. Let's just go. So really slowing down, looking at more of the details, whether it's from, employee handbook to your pricing model to your marketing. There's just a lot of moving pieces there. And so really kind of slowing down, working out each one of those aspects so that you can have an overall product, because we've had to make some changes with our pricing, with our name, with like our, different contracts. And sometimes that is very, very tough when people are used to a certain way. You start off something brand new, or I get a brand new person in, they don't know any difference. So it's super easy. But if I have someone that's been doing something for a few years in the system, and I'm changing up our pricing model, or I'm changing something out because I think it's better overall, sometimes that's tough.
Yeah, Frank Nash talked about that because he rebranded, and he said people feel almost betrayed, like you're you're leaving a friend behind or something. Yeah.
Well, even one example is like having a dress code for employees. When you let them go a couple years of doing what they want, and then you're like, okay, no backwards hats, we got to wear like, black shorts or something like that. They're like, what is this? But if someone brand new, the trainer today that comes in brand new, they're like, okay, this is just the way it is. So just working into those details makes life way easier as you spend years running the business.
Got it. All right. Great answer. Thanks, Scott. What do you got, Janine?
I think that without a whole lot of detail that I can share is, I think my biggest, by the nature of my work, when I see something and somebody wants behavior change, if they come to me and they're like, hey, help me over this hump. And oftentimes it's like a business owner or professional, and they're saying, hey, help me with this. And I initially or early on, I would give sort of my response, genuine response. And I remember a time where that didn't land well. They wanted me to say what they wanted to hear and not what it is. And I don't come off super brash or anything like that. I'm sure that's pretty obvious, but they just did not want that information. And so the response was not positive. And initially I kept reflecting on, okay, I need to not do that again, or I need to do this differently. So I tried to do it differently. And I found over time that I was not happy with what I was doing. I was not happy because I was adjusting what I really needed to share and those type of things based on that reaction. Over time, I realized I needed to be the way that I needed to be on this and deliver it and those types of things. And then interestingly, that person came back after a while and was like, I didn't want to hear it. It hurt to hear it, but that was some of the best advice and the best direction I'd ever gotten. So it reinforced that notion for me that I needed to be genuine. I had the information. I was doing my due diligence on always working on growing myself as a professional and as a person. And I was giving my best foot forward on that. And I needed to stick with that. Scott will talk about when he was a trainer to when he switched to an owner. And he still trains, of course, but he will say, I found that I was probably a better owner than an employee, and built for that. And I think that as I translate that just to any professional, you have to figure out what space you sit the best in and how you sit best in that, as long as you're continuing to grow. And so that was one of the big lessons for me, and one that I encourage particularly people younger in their careers to really kind of spend some time on and own it and be okay with sort of figuring that out.
Yeah, I love that. Because a lot of it comes down to, because I know when I started the business, I was a terrible owner. I was a terrible leader. I was a dictator, and people don't want to work for dictators. So we had some staff turnover. So I had to learn how to become a better leader. And a lot of that meant reflecting back on exactly what we've been talking about. You know, what are my biases? What are the stories I'm telling myself? Am I looking at what do my team want? What do they need, you know, in order to succeed? Is this the best position for them? Is this the best position for me? Do I handle this well, or would I be better off, handing it off to somebody else? You know, all those questions, because I know when I open my business, it's my baby, it's my business, and I'm going to run it, and I'm going to control everything. And I just drove myself insane. And so I had to take a good hard look at myself. And like you said, it's not always what I want to hear, but it's what I need to hear. And so I think that's the first step in becoming a better owner, a better leader, a better person. And I think if you're a better person, then you become a better leader. 100%. So, and then my next question is, in your time in the fitness industry, has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming?
I'll say when I first started is I imagined everyone was going to be my poster board before and after. Like, and I see this a lot, like, you know, I was big into fitness. I expected everybody to be big into fitness. And so all we got to do is just work out every day. We just have to eat clean most of the time. And most of the general pop, and that's what I deal with, that's not what they're really looking for, in the sense of they want to make some modifications to get slightly better. And so sometimes that was hard, because I would get people that would come in and just work out a little bit, and they'd be pretty happy with that. But I wanted more. And so this is a lot that we talked about earlier. You got to meet the clients where they're at. Not everyone's going to have the same desires and wants that you have. And really, as I've evolved as a trainer and getting ready to become a father and stuff like that, like my needs and wants are going to change as well too. Like I won't have as much time to, or might care much as how lean I am. Not that you can't fit all this stuff in your life. It's just more of like having that understanding that you got to meet the clients where they're at. And like we talked about earlier, but the biases, I had a lot of biases of what you needed to do, or more people should act like me and be as dedicated as me in the fitness space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for a fact you're not alone in this industry with that. Janine?
I think that when I first kind of started working in this area, I assumed, because I'm not a trainer and I haven't been a trainer, I kind of assumed that the trainers had it figured out completely, and what they were struggling with was solely sharing it with clients. And then going through this, and to your point before of having even trainers go through the assessment that we created and things like that, I realized, like, no, this is just can be challenging in at least in one or two areas for everybody. And that because they're being asked all day long, every day, for all of this advice and all this instruction and things like that, they, just like everyone else, doesn't always give themselves enough self-care and take the time for themselves to do some of that, or figure out how to balance that within their work life. Because you just look and you're like, oh, you must have it figured out. That's why you're, and they do have a lot of knowledge, but I just realized they also need some support on how to get that self, take that time. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think my first 2 years in being a business owner, I was in the worst shape of my life because there was no self-care there. Okay. And then my last question, and I'm really interested in hearing this, where do you guys go for your personal and professional development?
I'm constantly seeking the best out there. I like going to perform better because I get this vast array of people, and they're giving me a little bit of information of like what they have going on, and then kind of dive deep in it. But I have other people, like there's, Dustin Nelson, who's a Chinese med doc out of Chicago. I like spending time with him. There's Dr. Eric Serrano out of Ohio. I like to spend some time with him. There's Dr. Ben House, who did have a retreat place down in Costa Rica. Like there's, and this is
I saw that you went there. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was amazing. He had a lot of fitness professionals and a lot of different walks of life, and an atmosphere where he's got several different presenters down there, and really learning from, really challenging your thought process. And again, I surround myself with so many intelligent people. Like it's very humbling. It's definitely one of these things of like, I feel like I learned so much, but I also understand I know so little. And so it just makes me hungrier to learn more, because I'm constantly surrounded with that. So those are really my top 3 people. Really when it comes to more the business side, I do a lot of, or I go to a lot of plumber stuff as well. He's been a big impact over the last couple of years of seeing his stuff. But when it comes to more the technical side, that Dustin Nelson, Eric Serrano, Ben House have been big influences on me.
Nice. I'll have to check those guys out. How about you, Janine?
I follow Scott around a lot on that. He's perpetually finding great, good influences on that. And of course, it's not my area where I've set, the majority of, I work on the human behavior side. So I just take it all in a great way. And then I spend a lot of time, with sort of my, I look at the psychological influences and go to conferences, American Psychological Association, all of those types of things. And there's just a lot of thought leaders. I look at Carol Dweck's work on mindset, things like that, and really dive into those and look at, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how I can take the science and translate it for people. I work a lot with neurologists and neuroscientists as well to understand some of those things, because we have these clinical impressions of things and we know some of that behavioral science, but I like to map it into the physiological science and the biological part when I can. Much of it is way over my head, but I really work on trying to translate that so that people understand that it is an opinion because I'm sharing it, but it is based on a lot of the sciences and the best research that we have to date. And that's an ever evolving field. And also sometimes I spend time deconstructing studies or looking at the way that methodology has been run on some of those to demystify them. Because sometimes you get these flashy headlines about these studies, and when you really look at them, like, there's like 25 people in there, wasn't randomized control, and so it gives us an indication of something, but it's not the end all. And so that's where I spend a lot of my other time. And then again, many of the people that Scott mentioned, and then good books.
Great. All right, guys. This has been awesome. Thanks again for taking the time today. So where can people go to find more information, sign up for the Differentiator Pro, reach out to you guys, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find us both on Facebook and Instagram. We're posting a lot of this knowledge that we're talking about. The differentiatorpro.com is probably the best place to learn more about the course and to find out all the information there.
Awesome. And those links will be in the show notes. Just go to trainergym.net, click on this episode of the podcast, and all the links will be in there. And Janine, I think what you said about diving into the details about the headline, the research behind the headlines, I think a lot more people can benefit from that these days instead of just reacting to the headlines. But we won't jump off into that ocean. So guys, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Thank you so
Jim,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Have a good day. All right. And then guys, what I'll do is right before this comes out, I think I have Justin Grinnell coming out next week, and then you guys will be after that. So it'll be like 2.5 weeks or so. And then I'll send you all the links, copy, artwork, so that you can push it out through your networks as well.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for doing this. It was really good.
No problem, man. I was looking forward to it, actually, because I really do think it is next level what you guys are doing down there. I really
appreciate it.
I believe in it. All right, guys, have a good rest of your day.
You too.
You too.
All right, bye.